Hi, everyone. There is a author that I have read some of his books, and he wrote an article for CNBC a little while back. Let's see, it was in 2019. Okay? And and what he talked about in that article is that there are four paths to building wealth. Okay. And so, when you think about it, it's going to make a lot of sense. Okay. So the guy's name is Tom Corley. In fact, if you look him up on Amazon, you'll see the different books that he's written. And I will mention different books that had impacts on me or solidified certain viewpoints that I have about the financial markets and investing and all of that. Um, but I was particularly struck by his thoughts on these ways of becoming wealthy or building wealth in your lifetime. And so I want to talk about some of these, and I will hit upon some of these as I continue with different episodes. So, for one, he calls one path the virtuoso, and that's basically you become an expert in your field, you know. And you see this all the time, like on television, in the news, and things like that. They bring in experts all the time. And these are usually paid experts. Experts have to be at trials all the time, and you have to pay for that expertise. And so this expertise that you build over time can actually generate for you extra income. Okay. So, you may not be somebody who ends up being on TV or something like that for your expertise, but there are other ways of being able to capitalize on what you know. Okay. So, for one thing, it can get you promoted and all that kind of stuff, which is a typical thing your expertise can bring you. But also, you can do podcasts like this. You can do books. You could do YouTube channels. You could do all kinds of things that might, for you, bring in extra added income streams over your lifetime. And it's those extra added income streams that you can decide, okay, so the money being made off of that, I'm going to stuff that into a income producing brokerage account, or I'm going to put all that money into treasury bills or whatever I decide to put it into. And so your expertise is one way of being able to build wealth over time. The second one is just investing in general. Okay. Um, you know, so investing in the stock market, having a brokerage account, um, setting up an account with the US government so you can buy treasury bills or uh, different bonds that they issue, getting, being a part of your 401k at your employer, all of those different things, right? Are you taking whatever leftover money you have from your budget and siphoning that off, building that emergency fund, building that extra cash pool that you might want, to make substantive investments, right? We'll talk about that later on too. But investing is a second pathway that you can build wealth over time. A third way is, of course, climbing the corporate ladder. Now, that's not for everybody, you know. In fact, I was one of those people where I never had aspirations to being a vice president or a president of a company. I didn't want to become a director necessarily, although my highest level in terms of ladder climbing probably was a director level. I did do that, but that was just kind of by happenstance. It wasn't something that I had planned on. Um, but it is the highest level I ever got was a director level in my career. And that's as far as I wanted to go. you know, um, managing other people has its unique skill sets that you have to build. So it may not be the path that you want to do, but for some it is. And it's a great way to build wealth because if you keep your expenses controlled, if you don't spend to your income level increasing, which I learned that lesson a long time ago, and I'm not sure where I learned it from or who told me. But as my income started increasing over time, I tried to keep my expenses as low as I possibly could. I didn't go out and buy the latest automobile, and I didn't, take on a lot of extra expenses as my income was growing. So even early in my career, in my 20s, I was putting, $1,000 a month or $1,500 a month or $2,000 a month into different savings vehicles, right? So the ladder can be a great way to generate wealth for yourself, but that's of course that you keep your expenses as low as you possibly can. Now, cost of living is going to do what it does, so expenses will increase over your lifetime. I remember my very first apartment was like $400 a month, which I don't know if that happens anymore anywhere, maybe in some parts of the world it does, but it's keeping those expenses low that will really make a difference for you in the long run. So that's the third. So you've got being an expert, investing, climbing the ladder of different companies. And then the fourth one is building a business. So lots of people do side gigs these days, have extra side income, doing whatever it is that they're doing. Doing Uber driving or door dashing or something like that. Those are kind of other things you can do. But building a business is its own kind of separate thing, right? Because building a business means that you may eventually be hiring people, to where you're leveraging off of their time as well. I started a business, which I will talk some about. And honestly, it has created a very nice second income. Okay. Now, all the money that comes off of that, I try to save it. I put it in different buckets every month, every paycheck. Some of it sometimes goes to pay expenses, but very little of it does. So my regular full-time job covers most all of my expenses. And I also have some other side gigs that pay my monthly expenses, for living where I live. And so building a business can actually be quite rewarding. It contributes to the economy if that's something that you aspire to do. And so it's a great way to be able to generate some other income, right? And it can also be something that you sell eventually. Like I have worked with a client that started a business of their own. Of course, it was a technology company. And they eventually sold that business here recently, in fact. And probably made several $1 million off of that deal. Okay. I don't know what the particulars were of the sale, but I know it was pretty substantial, right? So he doesn't have to work anymore if he doesn't want to. They don't have to. They may do something else eventually. In fact, they said, we may work with you again if, we start something else, and so these are the four paths, and you can take advantage of every single one of them, or you could focus on one or two or three, but I've done all of them, and I have worked on every single one of these in my lifetime. And even right now, all of these are actively in play, although the latter thing, that's not really my deal, and that's not something that I am concerned with at this point in my life. But I did climb it a little bit over the course of my career, but that is probably my least favorite right at the moment. All the rest of them, I heavily invest a lot of my time in for the other three, from an investing standpoint, business building standpoint, and my expertise. Okay. All right. So just something to think about. And if you want to look up that article, it is called There Are Four Main Paths to Becoming a Millionaire. And this is the easiest one, says a money expert. And I will tell you too that generally this guy says that on any given path, each one of these will take at least 20 years to do. Now, that may seem daunting, right? But if you're a young person, if you're 20, 25, 30 years old when you come across these episodes, you have plenty of time to do this. But even if you're 50, right, you might not amass as much wealth, right? Maybe. But these approaches can work for you too, okay? The time element is one of the crucial elements, but it's not a killer unless you're trying to do this right as you're starting to retire. That's really bad timing if you're trying to do it that way. But if you have any time, 10 years would be good. 20 would be better. 30 would be even the bomb, right? To have 30 years to be able to kind of work on this over time. But he said it takes generally that. And he said the easiest way is actually through investing. It still takes a while, but the time element gives you a lot of leverage over that time period. We'll talk a little bit about that leverage element and how it does that and all, because as your investments grow, as they earn interest and dividends and whatever else they might be earning for you, all that money can be wrapped back into your investment, right? Now, eventually, you may want some of that money siphoning off as your supplemental income in your retirement. But if your portfolio is generating $1,000 a month, $2,000 a month, $3,000 a month or more, that money eventually is going to be stuff you'll be able to use in your retirement, right? To make it a lot easier. Okay. So always be thinking about that you need time on your side. That's just a fact. That's just the way it is. Okay. And there's nothing worse than finding yourself at that moment where you have run out of options. And I, for one, want you to be able to leverage yourself and leverage your choices later in your life. Because if you don't, you could be like some of those people who are, you read articles all the time about people on fixed incomes struggling, especially when costs are rising and things like that. And let me tell you, it's expensive to be old. It's expensive to be an older person. Having to be in retirement facilities or pay for retirement facilities or pay for long-term care, those are big bills. Okay. So set yourself up with more options later on. You'll be thankful to your 20-year-old self or your 30-year-old self or your 40-year-old self that you gave yourself a chance to have a different reality by the time you hit retirement, or the fact that you actually can retire. Because in all honesty, there was a point at one point in time where I thought, am I going to be able to retire? Is that even possible for me? Right. And I still will probably work in my retirement because honestly, you've got to have, things that interest you, and you still need to be interested in life and doing things, right? But it'll be on my terms if I do that. But I don't want it to be something where I have to. That would be bad, right? That would make me a mean old person. Okay. All right. So just something to think about. You can write these four down into your journal. Think about, how can I become an expert in my field? Do I want to climb the ladder? Okay. Um, do I want to start a business, and what might it be? It could be a while before you do that, but it's something to start thinking about. And of course, from an investing standpoint, this is a whole lot of what you'll be learning through these episodes are these different investment vehicles, the pros and cons of them, things like that. Okay. All right. So thanks a bunch, and talk to you again later.